Just push harder. Okay. And I did that on camera. Wow. Okay, that's not good. Go ahead. Anna, go ahead, Catholic Anna.
Oh, no, it was the county of Southern Maryland that was letting parents put webcams in the car so that
When did the cameras come on?
when any sudden movement of the car, like a back turn.
When there was an alteration in the G-forces of the car. So if there was an erratic or a sharp turn, what else?
20 seconds it would
Wait. When else would it kick on?
Just any like straight, like any jolt, any sudden stop,
Any jolting.
sudden stops.
Any jolting until it stops.
No, I'm putting words in my mouth.
What? I can't. What do you say?
I'm just saying any sudden movement, that's it. I don't know.
Sudden movement. So if you accelerate too fast, if you have to hit the brakes, decelerating, this kind of a thing, and when it kicks on for 20 seconds, you're right. What do you see?
You see the
You can see the entire front seat or the interior of the car. In some, you can actually see in front of the car as well, like out through the grill. What's the problem or what's the benefit of this?
that it would be sent to the kid's parents, to the teen's parents.
You're going to send these clips to the kids' parents, and oftentimes they found people putting on makeup, sending text messages, eating, fiddling with the radio, so they weren't paying as good of attention as they needed to driving. What they also found, though, how did it affect their driving skills?
86% did better.
Yeah, it was almost 90% better. They had 90% fewer of these messages sent home at the end of a year than they had done at the beginning. And the argument is that this is going to lead to safer driving.
But anything embarrassing wasn't sent to the parents.
If you got caught having sex, for example, in the car, and that somehow stimulated the G-forces, they would not send that video home. Yes, Catholic Anna, thank you for that one. If you remember on this, there were questions about privacy. Privacy questions, because a lot of y'all that were against this did not want this camera being put in your property, your vehicle, to be used against you. Why were the insurance companies so interested in this?
Because it could lower rates for
Yeah, the insurance companies, there's a sense out there that if they've got evidence that in fact you're not doing anything wrong, but you're in fact driving well, Bethany, then basically the idea is that it's going to save them money, and ultimately they're going to lower your rates to put this in your car, so that in fact when you think about it, you are going to come out to the good on this as well. If you're a bad driver, you may not want it, but if you're a good driver, it makes sense that you really would.
Accumulate what?
What's that?
You said the insurance will be able to accumulate what?
The insurance is actually going to lower your rates to put that in the car, and the idea is that this is going to clear you, bottom line, clear you, as opposed to convict you. Any other questions about terms from chapter 2?
So the other articles that's mentioned in our schedule, they are not included, like the assault on separate power?
We did not deal with assault on separate powers.
How will your taxes be spent?
I nixed that one too.
And the little piggy goes to Congress.
Yeah, no little piggies. No little piggies. What's that? No chapter 4. No chapter 4. Anything else from 2? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I had a question from the questions
Yes.
at the bottom. It says, what were the punishments for the Boston Tea Party?
What were the punishments for the boss? Yes, go ahead, vegetarian.
Blockading the harbor and forcing colonists to quarter British troops in their homes.
Blockading the harbor and forcing the quartering of troops. Yes. Yes. Any others? Yes.
What's the difference between the First and Second Continental Congress?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
What number is that?
3.
Drop question 3, chapter 2. Question 3, chapter 2. Don't worry about it. What other questions have you got? Any others? Let's go to 3 because we're getting tight on time. For number 3, drop budget activity. Because we dropped all of the budget stuff this semester, so drop budget activity. Any other questions up here from anything from chapter 3?
Court packing plan.
What was the court packing plan? Oh, go ahead.
FDR, when they were striking down New Deal legislations, tried to pack more people, anybody over the age of 70.
Yeah, that's right. Do you remember what the breakdown of the court was? Conservative, swing, and liberal?
Yeah, there was 4 conservatives.
4 conservatives,
Was it 3 swings? No.
3 liberals, and then there were 2 swings. And who would the swings vote with? The conservatives. So they were striking down FDR's legislation, right? FDR got up, and sometimes it was justified, but sometimes the court was stopping him from fixing the Great Depression. So FDR came up with a plan. He said, we need new blood in the court. And so as such, he basically says, this is what we're going to do. For every judge that is 70 years old or older, I am going to appoint a new justice. Now, when you think about this, FDR was liberal. What kind of justices is he going to appoint? He's going to appoint liberal. And how many justices were there that were 70 or older? 6. So basically, he was championing to be able to add 6 justices to the court. Did he ever do it? Did this pass?
No.
American people were immensely against it. But what was the big reason why it didn't pass?
Because of the standard.
The phrase was, from the outline, the switch in time that saves 9. Who switched to?
The swing voters,
They began to vote with.
liberals.
So FDR, instead of losing 6-3, began to win 5-4. How did the court change the way that it decided cases after this? Go ahead, too.
Only social laws, not economic.
They basically said we're going to leave economic issues to the elected branches, Congress and President, but when it comes to civil rights and civil liberties or social policies, as you've said, then yeah, we are going to exercise in those areas. What other questions have you got from 3? Go ahead, move on.
The dual federalism.
Dual federalism. Don't worry about dual federalism. Let's take that one out.
Can you go over in the beginning?
What was the relationship between the federal government and the state governments in the beginning?
States had more power.
States had typically had more power. They were the driving force under the Articles. The states were really the driving force as well in the first third of the country. In the middle third of the country, if you remember, it was about 50-50. So from the beginning up to the end of the Civil War, states were the big players. From the end of the Civil War to the Great Depression, it was basically 50-50. And from the end of the Great Depression, or the beginning of the Great Depression to now, the federal government is the branch, the body, I guess, that's really more powerful. That's what in the beginning dealt with. Yes?
Can you go over commerce power?
What was the commerce power? What are the 2 conditions that have to be met? Go ahead, 2.
Across different states, and you have to purchase something, service or.
Okay, purchase of goods and services, and it's got to cross state lines. Okay, can you give me some examples? And so the court in Gibbons, the Gibbons versus Ogden case said commerce is basically intercourse, commercial intercourse. And when you buy something, a good or a service, and examples of this, if you remember, I'd use prostitution, for example. I had also used buying a bus ticket. These are examples of services.
Was it the Mann Act?
The Mann Act is one that actually makes sense on this. Go ahead.
Tax and spending?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought you had examples. What other examples do you have from commerce? Go ahead.
Did you say, like, your example was, let's say I was on a road trip and I stopped at a Cracker Barrel, buy something, and then...
That sounds like something I'd say. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm technically, I don't know what I'm trying to say, I mean...
Desegregate.
Desegregate.
How could you show that a Cracker Barrel was involved in interstate commerce if it's by a state border and it's on an interstate highway?
Is it where the things were bought, like say the ketchup bottle or something?
That's one way, and in fact, you could use that if they weren't close to a state line. And I've given you the example in South Carolina. There's places where it is better that people don't go. When you think about this, go ahead.
Check the license plate.
Check the license plates. Buy something with a credit card. You've got a record of a purchase. If you drive down to South Carolina, you buy something with a credit card, you're engaged in interstate commerce. I had given you examples dealing with things like child labor. I had given you examples with prostitution in the buses. I'd given you examples of if you walk into the produce area of the grocery store, you see fruits and vegetables from all over the country, even sometimes the world. I had also given you the gun example. Do you remember the gun example? What was the gun example? Go ahead, Catholic Anna.
I think it was like the different parts are made in different places.
I'm sorry, and what does that mean? Was that what the court argued?
I forgot where else I went with that.
No.
No, they like did some really complicated, lots of steps and stomp thingy. and
Lots of
then-
steps and stomp thingy.
Yeah.
So can the commerce power be used in the Guns Free School Zone Act?
Oh, no.
No.
That was one of the few examples, in fact, if you remember, that they put a limit on the commerce power. Of the powers that are in the Constitution, the commerce power is the biggest one that the federal government has. So keep that in mind. Go ahead, Josh.
Taxes and spending.
What was tax and spend power? Anybody?
Congress has, ability to tax, president has the, ability to, never mind.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Isn't that the one where the president was like, he could, no, the state could like do the highway thing?
Yeah.
where like, if you lower the drinking age, or
Raise the drinking age, then what?
they would give them 5% more.
5%. Tax and spend power. Congress has the power to tax and spend, and that's an express power that's in the Constitution. So that's the first part about this. The idea was that they wanted to put conditions on the money that they had spent. And the condition in terms of the tax and spend power is they said, if you will raise your drinking age to 21, we will give you 5% extra free money. Who was it, based on when we talked about this, that was... Okay, Louisiana is the state that didn't do it. But what group is going to be the one that's most impacted by raising the drinking age to 21? 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Are you losing anything by accepting this money if it's the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds? Yeah. Why not?
They're not voters.
Because they're not typically voters, and that's a chapter question from chapter 1. With this in mind, when you look at this, a lot of states felt like they were really being almost blackmailed into this. How did the court look at it?
They're not bribing.
What's that?
They're not bribing at all.
Why are they saying it wasn't a bribe, it wasn't a blackmail?
Because if they were going to take away money, then it would be bribing. I mean, not bribing, it would be blackmailing. But due to the fact that they're just paying them extra, it's just extra money.
They're saying that you had a legitimate choice, and since they're saying X plus 5%, you're free to say no, and you still have the exact same amount of money anyway. They said if it was X minus 5%, if you did not accept the drinking age, now they're basically not giving you a choice and they're blackmailing you. And the other piece, that X plus 5 was viewed as an incentive, so it's legal for Congress to do. And in all the classes, I believe I'd given the example of the Newport cigarettes. Would you loan somebody money and tell them, hey, I'm going to loan you 20 bucks, but I don't want you buying cigarettes? And if you see them smoking the next time, then in fact many of you said, I wouldn't loan the money again. Congress is putting conditions on the money that they're giving to the states. Any others besides Josh? Because I know he's ready. Go ahead, Luhan.
Privilege and immunities.
Privileges and immunities. What was that? It's a very small one. In the night class, Jose was the one that said, I did it. What did I do with privileges and immunities? In 2 o'clock class,
When you moved,
what's that?
when you moved from one state to the other, but you collected unemployment.
Oh God, we're filming right now. I probably shouldn't admit to this. Privileges and immunities dealt with unemployment benefits, and it dealt with that South Carolina case. And the South Carolina case was when the guy had moved up to Connecticut. Was it legal for him to get benefits on the first day, even though he just moved up there because the benefits were higher? Yes, because of privileges and immunities. And what was the specific privilege and immunity? What right did they say would be violated if, in fact, you did not?
The right to travel.
The right to travel was the privilege and immunity that was in question. As you look at this, I believe we've dealt with all of the powers in here, and I think that's probably good for 3. Looking at the articles, yes?
I wanted to just do devolution, revolution.
Don't worry about devolution, revolution.
I see you, Josh.
I just want to know, you know what I'm saying? Appreciate it.
Okay, looking at the articles on this from chapter 3, and there's not too many on this. Crackdown in Arizona was the Arizona immigration law, and I know we're coming up on time, so I got to hustle a little bit. Pay good attention to that one unless I remove it. I think some of you are going to have it, some of you are not. The Arizona immigration law, if you remember, that was the one that was dealing with, well, what was that one dealing with? Go ahead.
Crackdown, it pretty much says that like they can racially profile immigrants
Yes.
for anything, for like any lawful reason. Like if you were being stopped by a police officer, they had a right to ask you if you were a citizen.
They had a right to ask for proof,
Yeah,
in
proof
fact.
of citizenship.
Yeah, and this is during a lawful contact with a police officer. That was the one part of this that was upheld, and that's important. But there were some other pieces to this too. So give that one a good once-over. And really the debate on this was, Arizona is saying, you failed us, federal government, so we've got to take this undocumented immigrant or illegal alien policy, illegal immigrant policy on our own. The federal government is saying this is completely discriminatory. And in all of the classes, I would ask you a question. Would you ask Becca for papers? Well, Becca's just a white girl. Probably not. Would you ask Luhan for papers? Well, no, probably not Luhan. would you ask Dreesty for, well, maybe, but that's not to say that Dreesty is here illegally or anything. That's just to say that she fits that certain racial profile, and the federal government's saying that's illegal and we can't do this, even if somebody is not here legally. Humane dealt with the death penalty.